What's up, everybody? This is the first installment of Tyler the Writer, where today I will be talking about Marvel's Blade. And I should say today, because it is midnight recording this, I figured it would be nice to have the dark atmosphere for the vampiric effect. However, I needed the light on to see, and you can't really see out the windows anyway, but it's midnight, so the vibe is there. But still, Blade, of course, being a vampire, for those who don't know, specifically, Blade is a Marvel Comics character originally from, you know, fictionally from London, England, which a lot of people don't know because of his super popular portrayal by Wesley Snipes. Which, fun fact about the Wesley Snipes Blade, Marvel in the 90s, where they were going bankrupt, very long story short, but they started to sell other characters. Spider-Man and his characters, of course, went to Sony, and then Hulk went to Universal, and then you had Fantastic Four and the X-Men going to Fox, and so they needed something to pull themselves out of the water, and so someone came up with the idea to do Blade. And so they hired Wesley Snipes, and that movie basically saved Marvel from bankruptcy. And then it kind of led to the MCU that we have today. So it's a hugely important character when it comes to the MCU. But in 2019, Marvel announced that Mahershala Ali, amazing actor, would be playing the new MCU version of Blade, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, that never happened, as you can tell. There has been no Blade movie, there is nothing. And so this video will be my pitch if I were working for Marvel, or if someone were to, hire me because they saw this and they loved it, what I would do for Blade, who I would cast, everything that I kind of got for a pitch. We'll get to that though in a second. But since then, since 2019, Blade has kind of popped up in a few places. We'll say in no particular order here, but he has popped up in the Marvel Midnight Suns video game, which I bring up because I just played, even though I believe it released in 2022. But I've recently been getting super into the Marvel Dice Throne game, which is really awesome. Video is not sponsored, but if they wanted to sponsor me, I'm 2 boxes short to collecting all the Marvel characters. So if you want to send those to me, that'd be awesome. But I've never been into turn-based combat video games, but ever since I've been playing Marvel Dice Throne, I decided to give it a try. So I downloaded Marvel's Midnight Suns. It was pretty good. I thought there was way too much dialogue in it, but I digress. Anyway, Blade, of course, is a prominent character in that video game, being one of the characters that you start with and play with throughout the entire game. Then most prominently and most connected to the MCU and Mahershala Ali was the voice role that Mahershala gave, the vocal cameo, you could say, at the end of the Eternals movie in the post-credit scene where Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight, was reaching for his sword, and then in the background you heard Mahershala say, "Are you sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?" Something along those lines.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
So that's the last and only time, mostly, that we've heard of Mahershala Ali's Blade. Moving on, we have Deadpool and Wolverine, that movie where they went to the void, and we saw Wesley Snipes's Wesley Snipes's Blade in that void, and he made, of course, the famous, possibly infamous quip. There's only one Blade, and there's only ever going to be one Blade, if I remember correctly.
There's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade.
Should have looked it up, but you get it. So the other times that we've seen Blade has been in Marvel's What If series, where he played Blade Knight, a combination of Blade and Moon Knight, where Blade is now a worshiper or maybe even possessed by Khonshu. If you've read the comics, it can be complicated. But essentially, that was, I think, a Mahershala Ali voice role. So that was kind of connected, but of course, in the multiverse, which we'll talk more about in just a second. The last place, at least that I know of seeing Blade that I have on my list here, is Marvel's video game, Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals, great game. I have way too many other things to do to play it too much, but I do play it. I have played as Blade, and it's pretty cool. They had, of course, much like Fortnite, Apex Legends. I'm not a gamer. I know of these games, but much like those games, they have seasons. And so there was a whole season centered around Blade and vampires. So when it comes to Blade, he has been, you could say, sparse in the modern day, but also keeping up with the modern day as well for those who kind of search for him outside of the movies. Especially, I really enjoyed the Jason Aaron run of comic books, The Avengers, where Blade plays a few prominent roles in that as both an Avenger, and there's a whole vampire storyline there as well. So, lastly, the last thing that we've heard, there are rumors, rumblings, reports of him possibly being in Secret Wars or cropping up somehow in Doomsday, any of these coming projects that we're going to see. Of course, Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, did pop up in Deadpool and Wolverine and The Void. So if we are going back to The Void, it's possible that these rumors are mentioning Wesley Snipes, who will again be there. But if I were Mahershala, I mean, I feel like I heard rumors of him walking away from this. I don't really know exactly what's going on. But basically, ever since the 2019 announcement, there have been writers and directors who have come on board and left, and no one seems to nail down or seems to have nailed down an idea. But when it comes to vampire movies, of course, one of the most prominent of recent memory was Sinners in 2025. And actually, from what I heard, it was the best movie of 2025 by most critics' standards. It was an amazing movie, a great vampire movie. Sinners takes place in the 1930s. They mention Al Capone, and there's a lot of stuff. I don't really want to get into it and spoil it, but it's a great movie. However, why I bring that up is because not only is it a vampire movie centered around African Americans in Louisiana, but apparently that storyline was extremely close, too close for comfort, to what the original written storyline for Mahershala Ali's Blade was going to be. Hence why it didn't happen. Now, the biggest problem with that idea, though, that I could see as a writer is that when it comes to a story that you make that is set in the past, especially in an established universe, it is hard to not only then get that story to connect to your universe, but especially when it comes to superheroes, the explanation that the Eternals had to deal with, where it's like, where were you then during all these battles and times that you could have really changed things? The Eternals went with the route that they were only required to fight when deviants were involved. But with the messy Marvel comic history, Thanos was a deviant. So honestly, what I kind of considered with how large Thanos's army was, the entirety of his army seemingly was aimed at Wakanda. There could have been an easy explanation to say, okay, Thanos launched his army at other places where the Eternals helped out. Maybe even just one other place where the Eternals were. We just didn't get to see it because we didn't know who they were. Because did I already say this? Thanos is a deviant in Marvel Comics. It's complicated, as all things are. But anyway, it's very hard then to make something that's in the past and give those explanations for it. So the easiest route that Marvel had the best chance with going with what they have going on and in their universe is, of course, the multiverse. As we know, in a multiverse, anything can happen. It doesn't matter, no connection to anything. So like I said, we would talk about the multiverse later. So here is my pitch for Blade. The first thing, like I said, is that this will be an alternate universe, but I do have at the top of my writing here R rating question mark, possible R rating, which would be super cool. So here's what we have. We have the world in this alternate universe has been overrun by vampires, and the Avengers are all dead. Dracula is the leader of all the vampires in the world, around the world. Dracula, of course, is a character who was made by Bram Stoker way back when. And so free use, basically, when it comes to copyright. You can use Dracula in anything. So might as well use him for a villain because he's easy to kill off and not like a big name that you would want to return. A one-time villain, kill him off, good to go. Marvel has a problem with that with villains, but in this case, being in a multiverse, we don't really want him to stick around, but there's a way for him to come back too. We'll get to that. Anyway, Dracula, my first idea is for him to be played by Delroy Lindo as the character. Delroy Lindo, you might know from Sinners, except he was not a vampire. Was he made a vampire? I can't quite remember. But him being our Dracula here. And so the sun also never shines due to the character Blackout, who's a minor villain in Marvel Comics, a vampire who has the power to distort light around him to make things dark, hence the name Blackout. And he has wild, shaggy hair. So I figured that he could be played by Norman Reedus of Walking Dead fame most prominently. So not only is there blackout, to cause there no sunlight ever so the vampires can run free. But there is also a later reveal coming, spoiler alert, where they have corrupted Moon Knight, played by Oscar Isaac, of course, but later reveal, so we don't have to pay him that much to be in this. But the corruption of Moon Knight so that the moon is now sticking around forever. So Blade, who was an Avenger, just like the Jason Aaron run, he keeps saying, mentioning to people that he watched them all die, maybe even a voiceover narration where he says this as they tried to save people. However, another later reveal, spoiler alert, is that they all eventually turned to vampires and he personally had to kill them, which maybe not be or isn't that big of a reveal, but enough of a reveal. Blade now travels from London, where he's starting, and whether or not he has a British accent, because he's from London, clearly he doesn't with Mahershala Ali's voice that we heard in Eternals, but starts in London. Call it an homage to the comics. But he's going from London to Transylvania to kill Dracula. Very kind of basic mission here. And throughout it, he's, of course, hunted by minor vampires. So we open after some introduction, whatever happens here, voiceover, whatever. But we open in London as a woman and her two kids are running from these minor vampires, and Blade, of course, steps in. Badassly, he kills the vampires, and the woman says that she and the kids just needed food. So they stepped out of their, bunker. We'll say humans are in bunkers or shut up in their houses, whatever. Rarely go out to get food. Everything's kind of dire. We do have, I have to think of, this is off the cuff, by the way. They do need to get food. So I suppose we would have brave souls doing supply runs, Blade doing supply runs, if there are any heroes left, which we'll find out there are some, doing supply runs for what they need. But these people had to step out. So anyway, Blade, being the hero that he is, he gives them some food, and then they run away, learning that he's a vampire. So they, he flashes some teeth or something, and they're like, vampire, and they leave. And so it kind of makes him sad that people are even afraid of him. So after that, Blade keeps walking, and we can have the credits rolling during this time, and we see Blade's origin, him meeting and working with Whistler, which, by the way, should talk about some of this for those who don't know, but Blade's origin, briefly, he was turned into a daywalker, a vampire, able to walk during the day and the night because his mother was attacked by a vampire, Deacon Frost, that's the vampire's name, while she was in childbirth, in labor. So he kind of got the mix. Whistler is one of his famous mentors from the comics, as well as from the movies. But we'll see him meeting and working with Whistler, the death of Whistler, maybe some unnamed romance that happened as well, and then the death of that romance. And then also eventually with him walking the next scene, I'll come back to something in a second. But I also wrote to have an abandoned young girl for Blade to protect. And I wrote that this young girl could be played by Mia Goth, not like, teenage young, but Mia Goth, a young girl who's following him. So we'll talk about her too. So another thing though, if we, have the budget for this movie and we want to show the Avengers who they were, or even, when Blade reveals that he killed them all, I do have a lineup of Avengers here. So we have Black Panther, who would be played by Michael Jai White. We have Captain Britain, played by Alan Ritchson. I believe that's how you say that, the guy from Reacher. Black Widow, played by Gal Gadot. Um, who else do I have here? Man Thing, who would show up, but Man Thing would be Carrie Jones, the same person who played him in Werewolf by Night. We would also have Werewolf by Night, who was played by, I wrote it down and it's really small. Um, I probably can't pronounce that, but the same actor, and I can't see it in my own handwriting. Anyway, and then we would also have Iron Fist played by Finn Jones to kind of give that character a send off from the Defenders, but he also might be in what they're doing with Daredevil Born Again as well. So we'll see. Later in this film, vamps are seen feeding on a corpse. Blade plans to attack from behind a corner when suddenly this black sword kind of boomerangs through two of the five of them and then is caught by Black Knight, who is, of course, played by Kit Harington, same from the Eternals movie. But then he comes to the fight and dispels other vampires with his sword. So now we have these two partners working together. But they partner up, they move on, and then meanwhile, him and the little, I keep saying little girl, young girl, Mia Goth's character and Blade, Mahershala Ali, keep seeing that Black Knight is talking to his sword, being all creepy, talking to himself, because as we know, the Blade, makes him crazy. I say as we know, but maybe you don't know that. If you read comics, you should know. But the thing that you can probably see where this is going is because Blade sees this and is learning that this sword is making this guy crazy. So, of course, that's something that he brings into the Eternals movie with his comment that, "Are you sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?" Because he knows. So, anyway, his sword wants him, keeps telling him to kill Blade and Dracula and become king of the vampires, basically king of death, or essentially a new king in black, which could also be a reference to Null, kind of laying that seed. So the pair fight and rescue humans on the way to Dracula, all the superhero stuff. Once in Transylvania, they get hunted by Blackout. So we have this kind of minor boss fight happening. Blackout blinds the characters with pitch black darkness. And then Black Knight uses his magic sword to turn the tide. And then Blade finally kills Blackout for good. So Night gets a little bit brighter, but it's still a mystery why it's still not daytime. And so even Black Knight and Blade comment on that, wondering why nothing changed before the eventual reveal of Moon Knight. Meanwhile, Blade and the girl keep noticing that Black Knight is getting a little crazier. And then this is where Blade can kind of confess killing the Avengers somehow during like a heart to heart with Mia Goth's character. But anyway, before the big fight, though, we have the third act conflict, you could say, where Black Knight officially goes crazy and tries to kill Blade and, do all these things that the Blade was telling him to do. The sword, sorry, not Blade, it's confusing. But Blade, the character, kills Black Knight and takes his sword. So now he's been upgraded with the sword, but also the potential to go crazy. So, big final fight with Moon Knight, who has been possessed or controlled by Dracula and Dracula, maybe some other vampires, and Blade, just this whole bloodbath. And then, of course, Mia Goth's character as well. But another reveal that I thought about adding is that the girl was a vampire all along, and somehow Blade didn't know, can figure out how that happened. But Blade fights all of them, and she is kind of like the one who, secretly stabs him in the back, betrays him at the last moment. So right before he dies, though, it's just a losing battle. We can have this look super dire, but right before he dies, he's transported without the sword, but transported by the ebony blade that Black Knight wielded that he now has to a different universe. Or another thing that I thought of is that Blade can have items that he collected from the Avengers that he's kind of been picking up, or not picking up, but that he grabbed after he had killed them all. So one of those things can be like a Chekhov's gun where he's carrying this magical amulet from Captain Britain and he's not sure what it does. So eventually that amulet sends him to the main 616 universe, which, if I could go on a tangent real quick, it's confusing when the comic books of the 616 universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe always had a different number, and it made sense because they were separate and the stories were different, but I digress. It's very confusing. I don't really like it. So the ending though is Blade now in this new universe. And so we get these characters where he goes to recruit Moon Knight, Black Knight still because he feels like he needs him even though he went crazy, but he's going to try to help him, which explains why he arrives in Eternals. He finds Man Thing and Werewolf by Night, and he finds Captain Britain. Possibly these are all played by the same people, and they form the Midnight Suns. And then, of course, Ghost Rider can be like a surprise sixth character that arrives in the Midnight Suns movie, maybe a post-credit scene even of this movie. But I did write down that Ghost Rider would be played by Keanu Reeves if they go with the motorcycle. What's his name? Johnny. I almost said Johnny Knoxville because it's stunts. Johnny Blaze, of course, is who I meant. Or he can be played by Diego Luna, the Hispanic actor who I believe played Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he could reprise the role as the newer Ghost Rider, the one with the car, which would be really cool as well. So then the Midnight Suns film would be about them kind of going to kill Dracula. Last thing though, I do have that they could go in this Midnight Suns film sequel to Blade, all go together to go fight Dracula and this horde of vampires. But there could be this plot twist where in the MCU, which of course is more in line with our universe, very closer or very sorry, a lot closer to ours. There could be this plot twist where in the MCU, Dracula does not exist. Rather, he is just this creation by Bram Stoker. But instead, when they get to the fortress, it's actually Deacon Frost. And it can be kind of the same origin, same person for Blade. Now it gets complicated with the multiverse, but it can be still Deacon Frost from that universe, and Blade can then kill him, possibly even preventing that Blade, and then Blade just stays around. There we go. Again, off the cuff, ties that up. But basically, there it is. If I was the person writing Blade, that is exactly what I would do. So let me know down in the comments what you think of that, what you would add, what you would change, maybe if you would fix, some of the casting. Let me know if there's something that I forgot about. Let me know if you like it. And of course, just like the video. And I will say next videos that I plan to have coming out, I need to find time to see Supergirl. Not sure when I'm going to do that, but I will talk about it once I do. And then I also have a video coming out about Sony's failed Spider-Man universe and what I would do with that if I were also the writer or, main navigator head of that universe. So thank you for watching. Of course, check out New World Comics, and we'll see you next time.